seminar series. As you can see from our slide, if you weren't alerted earlier, my apologies, but something came up and Dr. Osterholm was unable to join us today, but he very graciously has rescheduled for Friday, February 25th. And we'll hold that as a part of our regular seminar series. So it will begin at 10 o'clock, just like the other seminars. Originally scheduled for Friday, February 25th was a fairly internal conversation about all of the great anti-racism and diversity, equity, and inclusion work that we've done here in our division in epidemiology and community health as a part of the School of Public Health. And so those speakers were gracious enough to switch with Dr. Osterholm. So we've just flip-flopped the two dates. If you have a copy of the seminar series schedule, you'll see that's exactly what has happened. So I'm very, very grateful to my colleagues and our friends here who are able to join us today to discuss their work and our work collectively on, again, anti-racism, diversity, equity, and inclusion in the division, and hopefully our impact both in our communities as well as globally. So with us today are Dr. Tracy Toomey, who leads the division's DEI committee. And I believe Colleen Flatham has also a formal designation. I would view her as a co-chair for the DEI committee as well. In addition, prior to the division's DEI committee, which we'll hear about its initiation, we had a group that met as a part of the 2-2-22, envisioning the direction of the future of this division. And leading that DEI group was me and Jennifer Lindy. So you'll hear a little bit from us as well. So I'd like to take a minute and thank you all for switching, and thank you all for spending time with us to talk about these super important issues and the work that's been done so far and your vision for our future. So Tracy, welcome.
Thank you, Ruby. I'm really pleased to be here. In the rapid switch, I have to say we scrambled a bit to pull together for today, but we're really happy to be here. And really, this is hopefully just to let people know what has been done and what is what we're currently working on, where we hope to go, as Ruby said, and really have discussion. And this work is ongoing, and we want to make sure that we are making good changes that don't introduce new harms. So very, very happy to have all of you present to have a really hopefully good we can share, but also to have good discussion. So I'm going to share my screen, and we had pulled together some slides, and the title, of course, is Past, Current, and Future EpiCH DEI-related work. And I'm going to explain a little bit later why I said DEI-related work, because terminology is changing and focus keeps evolving. We're going to talk a little bit about, sorry, I'm going to make sure, here we go. What we have done in the past, and since Ruby and Jennifer led that effort, I'm going to hand it off to them to talk about some of the work that was done previously.
Thank you. Next slide, please.
Thanks, Tracy. So we just wanted to, for those of you who aren't aware of it, call your attention to the Health Equity Work Group, which is a school level, so it sits in the SPH. It's an organization that started in 2005. Our colleague, Dr. Rhonda Jones-Webb, was one of the founders and continues to be a co-director. And the Health Equity Work Group, they've been doing a lot at the school level to bring these kinds of issues forward, including providing greater visibility to the health equity work that we do as a school, strengthening our collaborations with not only with our students, between our students, but also with our community partners and community-based organizations to really shore up that work. And then making sure that students and faculty are ready to work effectively in a diverse society. And so one of the great ways that they've been doing that work is with the introduction of the health equity minor, which has grown in wonderful ways since it was first conceived. Yeah, I sit on the curriculum committee for the work group. And so I've seen sort of how the minor has grown and really just highlights the strengths that we have in the school and in the university in terms of this coursework, and give students the chance to pursue that as part of their degrees. So thank you.
So this direction from our division on addressing these issues has been, fairly long-standing. And of course, we could have started earlier. Of course, we could have done more. And I think we're realizing the gaps just now. But I will say, with a short history of the work that's been done in this division, we started in about 2015. So as you may remember, or you might not know this, but we had leadership change around that time. And so at the initiation of the new leadership, we first started with a needs assessment, and that really began with faculty and staff. And it wasn't because we didn't consider the opinions and the directions that the students wanted us to go in, but rather because we were thinking longer term, we were thinking perhaps it would be best also to focus on individuals who we would know who would be here longer term. And so we began with the faculty and staff. When we discussed issues for the future regarding DEI, 13 topics emerged. Specifically, we had come together in a retreat format and considered what we needed to do as we moved forward. Of those, there was another convening of minds, and 3 key areas of focus were identified for our envisioning 2222. For those 3 key areas, which we're going to go over in the next slide, there were faculty co-captains selected to lead each of those and to move the direction of the committees forward. Those 3 areas were innovation, diversity and inclusion, and outreach. And so, of course, today we're going to speak mostly about diversity and inclusion. And in fact, you can see over the years how even our name and our structure has changed. So we began this group as the diversity and inclusion group. Within each of those, task force were identified. So for example, you can see the other 2 categories, the innovation and the outreach groups, had tasks such as identifying strategies to provide funding and support in an innovative way. And that was led by Pam Lutzy and Tobin Nelson. And then Jerry and Tracy had led the outreach group. And for example, one of their task was to increase our visibility as a division to funding agencies and potential funders, and to engage in the strategic partnership development and have those folks also be partnered with us. So I was there from the beginning, and I actually started with Jamie Stang as the co-lead. And as Jamie's time became more scarce, Jennifer joined me to lead the diversity and inclusion group. Jennifer, do you want to go over our aims?
Sure. Next slide, please. So here are the starting aims of the diversity and inclusion group as it was envisioned after the work that Ruby just described. One was to identify and implement strategies to increase diversity of new faculty hires. The second was to identify and implement strategies to enhance the student learning experience with regard to diversity and inclusion. And then finally, identify and implement strategies to increase diversity of the student body. So as you can see, focused on hiring to diversify our faculty, find ways to make our curriculum more inclusive, and then finally find ways to make sure that the students that we admit are also reflective of diversity. And you can see here's a timeline that we were working with to show the progress that we've been making on these goals across the 3 domains in the strategic plan. The diversity and inclusion timeline is in the middle here. This only maps out to the end of 2019. Obviously, we've done more work since then. You can see we've got the pandemic highlighted at the top as a reflection of one of those things that we didn't predict in advance that threw a wrench into everything. But we were able to pretty early on come up with a really comprehensive and thoughtful plan for improving the faculty hire process to reflect diversity. Simone French led that work, and we looked to the university for strategies and looked at hiring best practices and worked on making sure that hiring committees were trained in implicit bias and procedures that help ensure a more diverse candidate pool when we do hire those faculty positions. We've been working on the student learning experience. Faculty have been encouraged to seek out training to learn how to do that better if you were feeling like you weren't sure what you needed to do to diversify your curriculum or enhance the student learning experience in those ways. And then partnering with student services to work on what we can do to increase diversity in our student body, which also included our faculty admissions committees and applying some of those similar practices to the faculty hire committees in terms of thinking about implicit bias and holistic review strategies for applications.
It was during this process that it became very evident that this was the time to start engaging the students in what they wanted to see and how they wanted to be involved in this. So over the course of selecting people to join these task force, we had students, and again, this goes back to 2017. So most of them have moved on, but we had selected students to be a part of these task forces as well as staff. Next slide, please. You want to take this one, Jennifer?
Sure, yeah. So you can see some of the things that we've done in the West Bank office building to make progress in our 2222 goals. We've got the diversity and certificate program that the university offers highlighted as something that faculty and staff have been encouraged to do. And we've also got some changes we made to our space to improve accessibility, and you can see an accessible restroom that was put up on, that's the 4th floor, right? I'm not up there very often. We've also done some improvements to kitchens and to our space in general to make sure that we're thinking about those accessibility issues. And then we had seminars. We had discussion groups to talk about key issues in these areas of diversity and inclusion. And as you can see, these are all pre-pandemic. And so I'm trying to remember what exactly these were, but you can tell from the seminar room being kind of packed to the gills that this was something that people were very interested in taking part in. I believe the gathering in the Commons might have been when Diane helped us out by inviting someone she knew who was a Holocaust survivor to talk to us about that experience.
I think you're right, Jennifer. That's
yeah,
right.
I remember being there. So we did a variety of these kinds of things, programming in terms of enrichment for faculty and staff, and then also in terms of our physical space. Anything else here?
Of course, it's a shame that we weren't able to hold these again. It was very clear. Asha has a question in the chat box about how students, faculty, and staff were selected to be part of these task force, again, dating back to 2017. I can speak specifically to the faculty. Colleen was wonderful in mapping out whose expertise and areas fit to each task force and then suggested them to the chairs. And then the chairs spoke to the faculty members with regards to their willingness to serve on that committee. And I will say for this particular committee, everyone was willing. When we asked, everyone was willing to participate. With regards to staff, it became clear when we were having these types of engaged conversations and discussions about these topics that there were some staff who were particularly interested in having a bigger role in the task force, and they oftentimes were approaching us. There were a few times that we had reached out because we were looking for particular expertise in areas, but mostly the staff had reached out to us. And it was a similar situation with the students. Again, because these were long-term task force and obligations. Students had come in and out of our task force, but we did a similar type of self-selection early on. Tracy will describe our vision for the future, and that will take a new outlook on that. The other thing I wanted to mention, as we were heading out, we received a university internal grant to have mixers with faculty. We received that grant, I think I got noticed maybe December of 2019 or January of 2020, and we know what happened after that. So what we did was we pivoted that money. So unfortunately, instead of having what you see there, and we were going to have them here at WBOB, but also out in community. So instead of doing those things, we used the money to host the community members and expertise to come into the seminar series. So for example, we had 3 speakers last semester, and we have 2 speakers already lined up for this semester. For example, the executive director of the Immigration Center, Vina Iyer, and she's working with an EpiCH student, for example, will be coming to speak during seminar series, and and her visit is being funded by the small university grant that we received. So that will take place in place of the mixer. Next slide, please.
So as you may know, if you're an employee here at the university, we get engagement surveys. And so this graph pulled out a single question from the survey. Overall, my department demonstrates a strong commitment to diversity and inclusion. The data start with 2013 at the bottom and go up to 2021 at the top. These are broken down for faculty and staff respondents. And what you can see for faculty is a fairly clear progression of change in people who rated that question favorably over time, from 36 to 44% in 2013-2014, up to 87% as of last year's survey. The staff favorability ratings have generally increased, although that rating was 71% in 2013. It's 74% now, with a little bit of variability in between, or at least last year, I should say. So of course, this could be part of our initiatives. These data are capturing something, and it does look like whatever we're doing so far has been improving the climate of our department. Anything else on this?
We would love to have an equivalent to see how students have thought about these initiatives, what students have thought of these initiatives. Next slide, please.
And so we had the shift to the pandemic in early 2020, but then over the summer, we had George Floyd's murder and all of the consequences of that, all of the attention that was called to the city, all of the disruptions to communities that happened in the wake of his murder. And of course, the pandemic has also sort of brought a lot of the inequities in our communities to light, and really reminded us that this is urgent work. This is critical work. This is work that we need to be doing and doing as quickly as we possibly can. And so if there's nothing else to say about this, I think this is a good way to transition to what Tracy was going to talk to us about, Ruby, unless you had anything to add.
Just 2 quick things. So we see, of course, inequities, but we also see inequalities as the pandemic rages on or moves on. The other thing I'd like to say before we leave is what we've described here is, our division's response and how we've addressed DEI as a part of our envisioning 2222 and our strategic initiatives. During this whole process, though, we have hopefully successfully engaged the school. And the school has had a lot of change with regards to our initiatives dating back to 2015. And we continue to initiate conversations with the school. So this was not intended to be only about what we are doing. It's not, we're not siloed in that. It was just in the interest of time and in the interest of better being clear about what our task force are and how we work and how we want engagement moving forward. We did focus on our division. Thank you, Jennifer.
Thanks, Ruby.
And back to you, Tracy.
Thanks to both of you for the leadership that you showed over the years. It's much appreciated. I want to thank Colleen Flatham, who's also helping me with current stuff. She did a lot of work with the 2222. When Ruby asked us to switch dates with Mike Osterholm, one of the things we talked about is like, this is the perfect week to talk about some of the work from 2222, since you know that that's the date this week, and to acknowledge not only in this area but in the other two areas that we're focused on, and you know that these were kickoffs. There's a lot of work to be done with outreach and innovation as well as in the DEI area. As they mentioned, though, that really in 2020 there just became this urgency across the world that we need to do more and we need to do it faster. And Diana's division had put financial support into the work and asked me to lead and gave financial support to Jamie Slaughter-Acey, who's kind of the content expert on our committee. We named it the action team because we really wanted to convey the idea that we want to take action, we want to move, and we want to make change. And this is the committee members, current and former, and just want to note that we also bring students in as members, and they're paid staff members, but they are active members who are helping to lead the work that we're doing now. Sorry, my mouse is a little sensitive. So the purpose of our action team is really to do the work to advance DEI initiatives within the Division of Epidemiology and Community Health. So I really want to emphasize that because it gets confusing, because there's things happening at the school, which I'll talk about we're trying to align with, but there's a lot of things at the division level that needs to happen, because we make decisions about individual programs, we make decisions about how faculty receive merit pays and how staff do, and we control the admissions committees. So there's a lot of work that we have to make sure we do internally to our division. We wanted to create a plan that ultimately would hold people accountable, have timelines and measurable outcomes, and I'll talk more about that in a minute. And to put our goals and we want to put our goals into action and to actually try to meet our goals. And to note that our team is made up of faculty, staff, and students from the division. So in the 2020-2021 academic year, again, there's a sense of urgency, and I'll tell you, it was a swirl. I said, yes, I would lead this. And the reason I said yes, by the way, is totally acknowledging that I have a lot to learn myself. I'm on my own journey, and I'm learning and trying to learn rapidly. But the reason I said yes was because I'm a full tenured professor, and I thought if I'm not willing to step up and try to do something, learning and listening and all that along the way, and use the privilege that I have, then I wouldn't have been happy with myself. So I'm imperfect and I make mistakes, and I will make mistakes in the future, but I am trying to help facilitate movement. But when I said yes, it was just this whirlwind. It was like, I can't tell you how many emails and like, we should do this, we should do that. And it was just a swirl. And we did a lot. We had newsletters, we had trainings, we had panel discussions, we had webinars, we had educational emails. We worked on diversifying the art in WBOB, which we did, and I'm really proud of the art committee subcommittee that did that work. And we started to create a new strategic plan. And I'm really proud of all the work that we did, and Marlene and Gabby, who were our graduate assistants working with us on that, they did the bulk of that work, and they really did terrific things. What was hard though is that it was hard to kind of get our footing to really think, to really take the time it took to we should take to create a plan that is really integrated within our division. And the other thing that was happening in 2020 was that the school also had a sense of urgency, right? Like the school needed to do different things. We, as a school, had the health equity work group, we had EdIT, but we didn't have a plan and we didn't have a focus. And so while our action team was formed in the summer of 2020, there was also a DEI planning team that was created at the school level, led by Lauren Aldridge Jones. And so they were working on a strategic plan for the school, which ultimately it became clear to them that it should be the strategic plan for anti-racism. And so they worked on that in the year 2020, 2021, and it was released last summer. And hopefully all of you are aware of it, but I'm going to highlight some of the things from that plan in a minute, in case you're not. But like, I feel like that year, as we were trying to get our footing and we were doing a lot of activities, the school was doing kind of this mindful planning of developing the strategic plan. In the late spring, the school formed the sph DEI alignment team. And that is where people throughout the school level sit on it from various offices, and representatives from each division sit on it. And the goal behind this DEI team is to kind of bring us all in alignment. And there's moments, I'll tell you, it's rocky because we're trying to figure all of this out. But I think it's really good that we get together and we talk about it. And one of the things that became clear in that conversation is that it's confusing if we have a strategic plan and the school has a strategic plan. And so we went back and we really thought about what is our plan. And truly our plan is an implementation plan at the division level. So I wanted to be clear that there's a school plan, and then there's the work that we need to do at the division level, and we're really working to try to align those plans. And so where we are at is, doing that alignment and trying to move the implementation plan for our division forward and making sure it connects with the school. I just want to highlight that at the school level, that Lauren Jones is the director of that office, and Gail Smaller is the associate director. And just because I decided we're doing this last night, there's a new hire, and I think it's Andrea, and I don't know the last name of our new staff person that's going to be helping with this work. And maybe I think Lauren, you're on, if you could put it in the chat, which I can't read while I have my slides up. But they're leading the work around anti-racism in the school, and there is going to be a new name for their office as well, which is going to incorporate justice, which is a lot of the work that needs to be done. And there's some confusion even within our division about, we call it DEI work, diversity, equity, and inclusion. As Lauren mentioned in our alignment team meeting, that's a change in this field. And so just be aware that language around this is changing and will influence how we talk about things in our division as well. Just to note that there are committees at the school level. We already talked about the health equity work group, the alignment team, the action alignment team, and there's a diversity network, a student organization, there's EdIT, and that group has been changing, and they're going to be leading trainings, and they're getting trained to be trainers. And just to note that there was a strategic DEI planning committee, which I mentioned, that helped create the school's strategic plan. And this is, just want to highlight SPAR, which is the strategic plan for anti-racism. And I included the link below. Again, this is what the school's plan is, and the school is moving forward with this plan on many levels. It is the structure of this is there's there's 5 areas: leadership, students, faculty, staff, and alumni. Within each of those areas within SPAR, there's goals. So this is just for an example. For area 1, there's the first goal, which is to lead by example as we learn and bring awareness of the importance of anti-racism and DEI and create the culture we aspire to have. So that's just an example of one goal that falls under leadership. And you can see that there's several under leadership. And then just to explain how it goes even deeper is that under that goal, there's multiple actions. For example, to develop a foundation in anti-racism and anti-oppression principles, and the tactic for that action to meet that goal was to engage the SPH leadership in training and a retreat. So for each goal, there are multiple actions and tactics, which the school, along with some of us in the division, are moving forward. And just for the sake of time, I'm just going to keep going, because I encourage you, if you haven't looked at the strategic plan at the school level, the anti-racism strategic plan, I encourage you to do so. We should all be aware of it and help work together to achieve the goals that are outlined in that plan. So that was leading us up to the current academic year. And so I also just wanted to lead us into, kind of where are we now? And after kind of the whirlwind of the 2021 academic year and the development of the alignment team, the release of SPAR at the school level, it was kind of a moment of our group to take a bit of a pause and be like, okay, we've been doing a lot of activities, and some of those are really, really important. And I just want to highlight, Diane's leadership on that. And all the faculty are required to complete the OED certificate. Just as a start, we have a training institute, which is also focusing on health equity, which more than a dozen of us are participating in. And we're having active discussions in faculty meetings. And so there's a lot of ongoing work to get discussion going. But we also wanted to pause and kind of think about, okay, what is our plan, and making sure that we create a plan that is well thought out and, again, really integrated. I think, it doesn't work if it's like, okay, Tracy, you're gonna do all the work in the division. I mean, that doesn't make sense, right? It needs to be part of all the work that we do. So it needs to be integrated into the research projects that we do. So, for example, my research group regularly talks about issues around equity and making sure that the research we do doesn't feed into injustices or inequity. I just want to mention too, we had another shooting of, by our Minneapolis Police Department, and a lot of this week, which is another horrific event. And a lot of the work that my research group does informs enforcement efforts around alcohol prevention work. And we want to make sure that when we make recommendations to law enforcement, that we're not feeding into some of the problems that we're seeing with law enforcement and those inequities. So all of us need to do that in our research, but we have committees. We have a research committee. We have a division training committee that focuses on the teaching program. We have we have administrative groups, we have supervisors. So we have a lot of infrastructure in place. And really, we want to make sure that this work is integrated in all that we do. And so that's what the focus of the plan has been. And so we have a draft plan that's a living document that is not final. Part of the reason we are doing this presentation is to start to get feedback on it. We're working on other ways to get feedback on it. Is that we want to highlight some of the things that have been done or are put into place as action items for this year that various committees have indicated are their priority areas. We've created one table that highlights some of the things that we achieved under 2222 and under other plans. And we have ideas, a table with future ideas, and we wanted to create a plan, again, that built in accountability. So the status of it, again, it's a working draft. The priorities were set by existing communities. We have draft evaluation measures. So these are things that we need to now focus on, make sure that we can collect collect the quantitative data. We're doing some pilot work, which I'll highlight in a minute, of collecting more qualitative information or some of the stories around some of the work that we're doing. And we are also, as we are today, hopefully going to get feedback from different stakeholders. So the structure of our action plan or implementation plan, there's a whole bunch of things. And when I put together this slide, I have to tell you, I'm like, also like, this is a lot. And I think we can combine some of these, and that's some of the input that I would like to see. And I want to note that at the school level, there's been less emphasis on increasing our diversity and more on saying, well, we need to do the work to change our culture and make it a good place for everyone to be here. And so I think one of the things that is going to happen in our plan is to also shift kind of the order, because right now it's increasing diversity of faculty, staff, and students, which is really important. And that's part of the work we're doing with making sure we don't have implicit bias in our search committees and our admissions committees. And that was part of the work of getting rid of the GRE, which our division took a lead in a few years back. So I think some of the reordering and collapsing is going to happen, but these in general are some of the areas that we're focusing on. And you'll see it's integrated. We want to integrate things into our research, our teaching. We want to make sure the environment, the physical environment, continues to improve and be accessible and a good place for everyone to be, and just improve the experiences of our BIPOC students and students from other marginalized groups. And we have a long ways to go, and we acknowledge that, but this is a start, building off of, again, some of the earlier work that we've done. This is just to highlight what the structure of our draft strategic plan looks like. For each of those areas, we have identified priority areas for this year. You can see the red circle, the alignment. That is our work to try to make sure we have a clear alignment with the schools, with SPAR, the school's plan. We wanted to indicate that there's some things that happen only at the division level. There's some things that have to work with multiple levels. And this, I just caught this again. Colleen, just a note that this is an old slide. So our coloring of blue is off because it's not all of it should be at the school and university level. Most of it is at the division level. So we should see a lot more light blue in that level column. We also want to indicate who are the responsible parties. And so we have a definition list, but you'll see the acronyms under responsible parties. It might be the division head, it might be HR, it might be the head of our representative on the APT committee, it might be a various committee that is going to be held accountable for those priority areas. And I just want to highlight an example of like why it's important to do work at the division level as well as the school level is if you look at the very bottom, it says to create processes to ensure equitable division review for APT, which is the that's our promotion and tenure committee at the school level for faculty promotions and tenure. And there was a lot of work done by representatives across divisions and at the dean's office to change the tenure and promotion code to make sure that we have more equitable promotion criteria and making sure we value things like community engagement. And so that's in the code. We changed the code, but division heads are the ones who make decisions about the timing of when people go up for promotion. Each of us in the division talk about each candidate going up for promotion or tenure, and we also vote. And so we have to make sure that that new tenure code is actually put into practice when we do that work at the division level. Jennifer, I saw you unmuted. Did you want to add something?
No, I got the host would like you to unmute button and I wasn't sure why, but it's okay.
Okay.
Sorry to interrupt.
And then, so table 1 is a long table. This is obviously just the first page is an example. And then table 2, under the same categories, we tried to highlight some of the work that we have accomplished to date. And then table 3, as I mentioned, is kind of a way to capture ideas. So it might not be part of the plan this year, but is it something that we work toward in subsequent years? We just don't want to lose great ideas as they come along. So again, I just can't emphasize enough that this is a working draft, and we really want to get buy-in from the groups that are going to be held accountable. We want to get feedback from faculty members, students, supervisors and staff members and postdocs in our division. And so love to get suggestions of ways to do that. Students often come up, and we want to engage with students. And over the year, in 2020, 2021, we, Gabby and Marlene attempted to have meetings with a lot of different student groups and had pretty low turnout. I talked with Marlon. Marlon is doing some overviews in the meetings where he's meeting with first and second years within our MPH programs, trying to get some feedback that way, but more than happy to meet with any group that wants to meet with us in the division and have discussions. And we do plan to share the draft and get written feedback as well. And I promise you this plan will change over time. I just wanted to also highlight a little bit here of some of the evaluation work that we're doing. As I said, we had drafted ideas for quantitative measures, and it's that part we've drafted, and there's so much work to be done to solidify those measures. But along the way, it also came up like we need to collect some of the qualitative data. There's certainly outcome data that we need to collect that's qualitative in terms of the stories for people who are willing to share some of their stories, and so that we can also just see if some things are hard to measure through quantitative data, and sometimes the stories give us a better understanding of things we need to change, but also maybe in ways that we've made improvements. But along the way, in the alignment team meeting, we had a discussion about, just trying to collect some of the stories, and someone on the committee made the suggestion that, oh, well, maybe we should have some slides that would help guide some of this work. And so I want to just give a thanks to Vicki Wynn, who's our graduate assistant working with us as part of the DEI team, has been helping to lead a pilot of doing some of this work. And so we focused on 3 areas that that were part of 2222 strategic plan, and a couple that were really more part of the current plan. But just to try, so can we go out and can we start to interview people that are the ones kind of accountable for a specific strategy, just to find out what has been done, what are the barriers, and what are the plans for going forward. And so she interviewed 3 people that are in charge of specific strategies. And one was Ginger Hughes, who is kind of the lead on improving the environment, the physical environment. And that really, a lot of that work happened under 2222 and to improve the physical environment of WBOB. And that was already highlighted by, I think Jennifer highlighted some of that work. But it was really good to talk to Ginger to learn about it, like how did some of that work happen? And some of it is, many of us worked in WBOB for many years, and we just didn't pay attention to some of the deficits in the physical structure until we started to finally listen to people. And it's like, we don't have Braille in our elevators. We don't have Braille on our office nameplates. We do not have accessible bathrooms. We don't have an accessible kitchen. And so she worked with the University of Minnesota Disability Services to come in and help do assessments, and we located finances to make some of those changes. And so the next step is, like, she wants to pull together a committee to continue to identify things to improve in our building. And I just want to say that I think that's really important to find out, so that we can go back to her then and say, okay, did you pull together that committee? What is the committee? What's the next step of the committee? So knowing what we did to date, but also to have the questions to check back in and say, okay, you said you're going to do this. Have you done that yet? Another example is to integrate DEI efforts into teaching and research. And one of the strategies to increase support of our students are something called diversity supplements, or grant applications to NIH. And these supplements are tied, you can apply for them if you have an existing NIH funded grant that meets certain criteria. So that's one idea, to let's find ways to increase support. for students from underrepresented populations. And we've done a few, but a lot of us weren't even aware of this mechanism. So part of the, when talking to Nancy Sherwood, who's leading the research committee, it's like, okay, we increase some awareness among faculty members that is a possibility. We had webinars, and it also happened at the school level. But just increasing awareness, we know from behavior change, isn't going to be sufficient. We need to have tools, we need to have support, we need to make sure we have a mechanism. Like, how do we figure out which faculty should do this? How do we find the students that are going to work with the faculty members? How is that going to work for postdoc? How is it going to work for PhD students? With MPH students, how does that work, given that students are only here for 2 years and it's a multi-month process to apply for and get the money? How do we make sure it's a fair process for students? So there's so many details beyond just getting awareness up and running, right? So a lot of the work now is to then break down the silos and have the research committee work with student services and the administrative group to try to figure out a system to increase the number of students that we can get support for. And again, it builds an accountability to say, what did you do after the seminar? So we can use that information to continue to guide. And then finally, we want to make sure that we do support, use our financial, our money to support groups externally when we can, particularly can we invest our endowments in Black-owned banks? Can we have contracts with BIPOC-owned businesses? And I just heard this morning in passing that Black-owned businesses are much more likely to go out of business than white-owned businesses during the pandemic. So there's barriers to this at the university level. And so our administrative group is trying to work as part of a coalition to change the barriers that happen at the university level. So that's part of our work, is to make sure that our division is in there, continue to push for change higher up as well. So I'm going to stop. If there's a quick questions, I'll take a few quick questions, but then we want to put all of you into small groups just to debrief a bit about what did you like about the plan, if anything? I'm not going to be leading. You could hate it and tell me you hate it. Do you have any feedback, and how do you see yourself as part of implementing this plan, and what are we missing? We don't have a lot of time for that, but I at least want to send you all off to groups to have to talk to each other. It's good to have some discussion in the virtual world, and then again, we want to hear from you. But any quick questions?
Tracy, there were two questions on the chat, and I think they can be addressed pretty quickly, at least in this setting. The first was, I'm going to follow up on Asha's question earlier about student engagement. So with this new plan, can you just quickly summarize how students become involved moving forward?
Yeah, no, it's a great question. As I said, we've had students who are members of the team, paid members of the team, because we value their time and effort. But I really needed to hear from students. How do you want to be engaged? We've tried several things, and because we've heard students want to be engaged, and then students don't show up, don't do the review. And I know you're also busy, and I want to respect all the time. But I would love, is like, if you want me to come to a meeting, I'll show up. Assuming that I'm not double booked,
and maybe we can use some of the small discussion time. If there are students in the small groups, we'd love to hear from you. And then the second question, actually, it's a little bit out of our realm. This is from a PhD student, Amanda, who is taking the new anti-racism course in epidemiology for the PhD students. But she's asking about the other divisions. Do we, we do know what the other divisions are doing, but we might not know exactly which new courses they're developing on these topics. So can you answer what the other divisions are doing with regards to their curriculum?
No, we have some discussions on the alignment team, but that level of detail isn't always shared. But I think that would be great to know what other classes are offered, and but we do hear some of the other work.
The school folks might know that better than we would know that, I think. Those were the two main questions. Asha, they had a question about physical accessibility, the ongoing question about essentially why is WBOB so far away?
That's a great
I think
question.
that's a longer answer.
and my whole time at I moved in WBOB for work as an MPH student in 1991. It was only going to be temporary, and here we still are. So.
And I feel like we explain this, because some of us have been here for a long time and our students join us for a while and then move on. We did used to have a shuttle and it was no longer affordable for us to support. The university was not actually supporting our ability to be connected to the rest of the campus with transit, which is really disappointing. But yeah, so it's an unfortunate side effect of us being where we are.
So I want to thank you, Trace, before we go into the small groups. I do want to say one thing, though. I think everyone has been working so hard on this, but sometimes our actions are still reactionary. So when I think about, for example, the addition of Braille, the handicapped accessible bathroom, as you know, my family's been affected by disability as well. These were all in response.
Yes.
So, I mean, as much as we've done, there is so much to do, and some of that's going to be a prospective, looking forward, in order for us to be more inclusive, not just reactionary.
Ruby, thank you for that, because I totally agree with you. I think we have to do a better job of figuring out the changes without having someone to tell us, like, let's pay more attention and do that work. And in terms of issues around physical accessibility, Mahesh Matthew, I see that you're on here. We did some work. He was the lead on it to look at accessibility in buildings across our campus. And I really thought the university would do better. And there's so many things around accessibility that need to be changed. And I would love it if we could all continue to push for changes in our own building, but as other buildings on our campus as well.
How much time do you want people to have in small groups?
We're going to give you only about 5 minutes, sorry, because I want to bring you back for a quick wrap up. So at least maybe touch on a few of those questions. And Colleen or Jeff, can you put the questions into the chat box?
Great, thank you so much.
Tracy, if you have that slide with the questions handy and copy them and paste them into the chat, I can paste them into the, we can send them into the breakout rooms as well. I'd have to go dig in to find the
I'm doing it right now. Doing it right now.
Oh, Colleen's got it, good.
Can I do it? How do we, okay. I can't just cut and paste them. If I added them to the chat, can I get them? I can't.
I'll send that into the breakout rooms.
Thank you. I couldn't do it. Going great, Tracy.
I feel like we need to put a sign up, or I don't know, like I feel like I field that shuttle question at least once a semester from different students who are baffled by our circumstances.
We're baffled too.
Oh, I know. It's
as I drive over and park in a ramp and walk 10 minutes to get to my first classroom, plugging my computer in the snow.
Yeah, it's weird.
Yeah.
All right,
I
Colleen,
don't
I
know,
made you the host and I've got to hop off.
Okay.
Steph.
Okay.
I just come back to the will of the university to support public health.
Well,
I mean,
I
we don't
taught-
have a building, we don't have a unified space, they won't connect
right. Well, and
half the school to the campus. I mean,
with the disability services issue with physical accessibility, Mahesh really tried to connect with disability services to survey students, and they put it on Facebook, but they wouldn't send it out. And anyways, we didn't have as large of a response as we wanted, but among those that did respond, I think it's really really not good. Like
No.
the university should do better. And so our shuttle is one issue, but it's like, you know, some students are dropped off, you know, at this side of the building, but the accessible door is on this side. And then if it's snowing and, you know, and it's like, that doesn't make sense.
no,
Anyways, it's a pet issue of mine. It really is.
Oh,
I mean,
yeah, I get it. I mean, at least like to the extent that we're having those conversations about continuing to use Zoom for advising, you know, even once we're back in WBOB, like that's a very real need because our students are not there with us and it's inconvenient and difficult for all of us to engage. And we really don't have proper space on campus to meet with them if we're there.
Right.
I mean, I think they give us back the collaboratorium. I haven't been to the new space yet, but does it have private meeting space? I don't think it does.
No, in fact, I was just like, when they switched, I was just like, oh, we're supposed to meet with students, but it's going to be all of us meeting with students at the same time, and someone else is sitting there working and on the phone, and
you can't do that. I mean, yeah,
like I'm back in the hallway.
Yeah, it's not good. I wish
so we lost a lot of people in the breakout rooms, didn't we?
Yeah, it looks like it.
They hear that breakout room and they drop like flies. I'm serious.
I know.
I mean, I had to like readjust it like 3 times. Jeff's like, we're down. I'm like, I know, I'll adjust. So like, and then they jump. So some people have 2, whatever. People, but
When Lauren dropped out. So
yeah.
I know I was trying to be really good about connecting with the school.
Oh, it was good. It was good. I'm
Yeah,
glad
no,
she
you
was
did a
on.
great job.
I think we did a good overview of the history, right?
And I'll correct that darn slide. I'm sorry, I didn't know.
Oh no, I didn't catch it until I looked at it and I was like, oh, that's funny. The division doesn't have to do anything.
Right. All on them. All
So
right, they're coming back.
I was gonna say.
Yeah.
Welcome back. I know you didn't have a lot of time in your breakout rooms. I think some groups, are they all back? I can't see. Yeah, they're all back. So we lost a lot of people. A lot of people run when they hear the breakout rooms are coming. So just, for those of you that did go into your breakout rooms, do you have anything you want to share in terms of ideas or reactions? What do you want to see us do differently?
Yeah, hi, my name's Asha. I'm a second year EpiMPH student. I was in a breakout room with Diane, and we were kind of talking about what you had brought up earlier, Tracy, about how it's been difficult to get student engagement. And I think we were just talking about the gaps in communication, how sometimes emails get missed too. So maybe some way of having kind of one-stop shop, or not specifically one stop, but one place where all of these postings can happen. We were talking more specifically about, graduate assistantships, since that was a conversation I know you were part of earlier with the DEI Action Alignment team. But even with our division, I know it's hard for students to sometimes, find specific events or what's happening. And like I said before, emails do get missed. So maybe having like a specific website or something, or a virtual version of the sphere. I know when in person, it really helps to go into the sphere as a student to see what's being posted. But since a lot of us are online this semester, it's very hard to get that communication.
No, that's a great idea. And yeah, I know for some things that we used to put posters or flyers up in the sphere to reach students. And it's a good point that not everyone's in the sphere anymore. That's a wonderful suggestions. Thank you. Other things that came up in your breakout rooms.
Hi everyone. I was in the breakout room with Dr. Brady and Mahesh, and one of the things that I mentioned was about the strategic plan, the anti-racist strategic plan at the SPH level. I've brought that point before directly to Lauren when they were doing those hearing sessions, is that the plan is really good for addressing DEI-related work, but the anti-racism piece, which is dismantling structures of racist structures, it's not there. And I'm sure they got the feedback and they acknowledged that that was something that they needed to be improved on. So within our own division, I also hope that those things are in mind, because sometimes it's not really clear for people, the distinction about those things.
Yeah.
And something else that I think it's really important, especially within our division, that can also be included in your own work that you have been doing, is to specifically state how once you hire the faculty, they are from racial and ethnic diverse backgrounds, how do you include them in the division? This is a question that I always like to ask people, that, you know, it's great that you're trying to hire more faculty of color, but okay, once they are here, how you are making sure that they are felt as part and that they belong in the division. And the same can be said for the students as well, because for myself, being a student of color, I know when I came in, it was a stark difference, because it's not easy. And people need to be aware that, there needs to be in place something related that, something that includes that person within the division or the program that they are in. So those are my 2 cents.
Thanks, Sonia, for those points. And the one thing I can say is that I think we have a lot of work yet to do. However, maybe we at least can hear it better, that we have a lot of work to do. So, but I totally hear you and agree that we need to do that work. Any other comments? We are just a couple minutes past the hour. I'm happy to stand for a few minutes longer if anyone wants to stay on, but I want to respect everyone's time. And thank everyone for your participation today.
You have a hand raised, Tracy?
Oh, yes. Sorry.
Hello, everyone. Thank you so much for that wonderful presentation. I'm really amazed to see how much work that has been, put in place in terms of including like diversity, equity, and inclusion. It shows to see that, there's a lot of action, that has been going, and I'm really very happy to hear all the work that has been done so far. First of all, my name is Chine Yangwa, and I'm a first-year maternal and child health student. And I just want to suggest, in terms of classrooms and classroom participation, for instructors to encourage students to be more self-expressive in classroom settings, and also to engage. Like racism is more perpetrated by silence. So, encouraging students, instructors to have those difficult conversations and turn those moments to be teachable moments, for, both for every participant. Yeah.
Thank you for those comments. We've at least started to have conversations about how to do that. And I think I totally agree with you that we need to do more of that.
In fact, that came up in our small group as well, Tracy, and someone had a great question about if I have a specific comment or concern with regards to in-class discussion and behavior, who should they take it to? I suggested you because of your teaching expertise and also your leadership role here. But is there anyone else that you would recommend that the student take it to?
Yes, certainly. I hope you feel free to come and talk with me. Diane, who's still on here as division head. Dr. Rhonda Jones-Webb is the head of our division training committee, and she would also be very accessible. Evan Witt, who was on here, is the head of our student services. And then if Lauren Eldridge Jones at the school level, and by the way, there is, if you go to her office site, there is a place to report issues around racism, and so if you feel like it's something that needs to be reported at a higher level, there is a actual highlighted button now on the website to do that. But please feel free to reach out to me. I'm happy to have a conversation, and if I'm not the right person, maybe to help talk about who would be the right person for that, for whatever circumstance you want to talk about. Anything else that came up that anyone wants to bring up for discussion or?
Tracy, I just want to thank you, and this is Diane, you for your leadership, and Ruby and Jennifer for your leadership, and for all of our students who have spoken up on these issues. And yeah, it's great to see how things are coming together. And of course, Lauren and Gail at the school level for really making this work a priority.
Yes. And thanks to you, Diane, for all your leadership. Okay, well, I hope everyone has, oh yeah.
Thank you. I'll thank you. And then let me close out with one announcement about next week. Speaking on these topics, we will not be meeting at 10 o'clock. We will be meeting at 11:30 because we are doing a joint seminar with HPM in which we are hosting the mayor of Richfield, Maria Regan Gonzalez, who is my mayor, but also who has faced a school shooting this week. And she will be speaking about her work in communities, as well as her day job, which is the equity director of M Fairview. So she has a lot of wonderful advice to give to us and wants to energize our community, both students and those of us who work here. So we will send out information 11:30 next week.
Great. Thanks, Ruby, and thanks for your leadership with the seminar series. It's been great.
Bye, everyone.
Bye, everyone.